The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited has acquired the downstream assets of OVH Energy, second largest downstream company with over 380 retail stations across Africa's biggest economy. Hub Stockman, who's the CEO of OVH, said the acquisition by NNPCL comes at a critical time in the Nigerian energy sector, given the overhaul of the petroleum laws, the continuing increased demand for petroleum products, and particularly the deliberate efforts to increase and improve the supply and consumption of natural gas in support of Nigeria's energy transition goals. The major oil marketers of Nigeria released a congratulatory letter to both parties. The letter stated that both NNPCL and OVH are MOMAN members, and the organization welcomes and encourages the ongoing market consolidation in the downstream sector. It was signed by the chairman of MOMAN, Mr. Olumide Adesina. And he joins us now. He's in the studio live with us in Lagos. He's also the CEO of Ardova PLC, Mr. Olumide Adesina. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Good morning to you.
Thank you very much for having me, Rotus. Good to be
see
here.
You. Yes, good to have you again. Always great having you in the studio to talk
Indeed.
Oil and gas. So your letter said, which you signed, that you welcome the consolidation in the downstream sector. So why is that?
Absolutely. So this is not a new thing, right? The consolidation has been going on for the last 10 years, right? We saw the Forte acquisition. We saw the Turner Rain Oil merger. We saw the Ardova, Forte. So there's a lot of consolidation that's going on. And what that means is that if you have a country where there are 30,000 petrol stations, you've heard me quote that number a few times, and we're saying 3,000 of them are MOMAN stations, then the balance of 27,000 are independents. And whilst they will all have standards, the reality of the matter is that you have a large portfolio of independents, one station, who don't necessarily align with any kind of governance or exercise the same kind of caution around safety. So when you see consolidation in the marketplace, it means that there will be a homogenization of standards, particularly around safety. And it also means that we'll be able to move products in a way that's actually much more focused and holistic, rather than trying to put small products in lots of small places. Okay.
Oh, great stuff. You see, you're talking strategy. You've been the head of MOMAN now for a year.
A year.
Okay, so
my freshman year.
Great. Exactly. So here you are talking strategy. This is the stuff we want to hear from you. What's the experience been like, and what are you looking forward to in, I guess, the next year as head of chair of MOMAN?
Thank you. So, I think first of all, it's important to remind people what MOMAN does. So MOMAN's core function really is to protect the interest of the downstream industry. And I mean the industry, not any individual company. To promote stakeholder engagement and to make sure that causes that will lead to a sustainable free market downstream are actually adhered to. So that's our major calling. And governance-wise, it's managed by a committee of CEOs, who are the CEOs of the 7 member companies. So for me, what we wanted to focus on at the start of my tenure was really to build on the good work that my predecessor, Mr. Tunji Oyebanji, the MD of our Double One PLC, had put in place. The baton handed over when the PIA got signed. So we started looking towards implementation. Now that has had mixed feedback, but generally for me it was really around implementation of the PIA, advancing safety, the promotion of gas across our members, and really looking to see how we can bring continental best practice into play. So we've reached out to different retail associations across Africa. Our problems are never unique. We can always learn from them. So the PIE in Kenya is an organization we're talking to, and they're also learning from us as well. So in terms of what we set out to do, I think we're doing a reasonably good job. We've hosted about 8 different workshops around transportation and safety. We've engaged NATO, we've engaged PTD, we've spoken to the Consumer Protection Agency, because consumer protection is a big part of what we do. The touch point our customers have is at the point at which a transaction is done. And we know these transactions are generally fraud. So I think we've done a good job there. We're looking forward to doing things like monitoring. So one of the big things that we want to do is we want to make sure that as a country, we actually understand what we have in stock nationwide as a country. Big data. So we collect a lot of that big data, and what we're trying to do now in this second year is to really make sure that we are taking some of that data, similar to the way PPMC does, but for our members, we're taking that data and we're trying to turn it into information. So one of the big innovations that has happened in the last year is that with the data we collect today, we are able to predict whether or not there are likely to be queues if the berth is empty for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah,
so we have some sort of predictive AI
Gotcha.
type things built into it. So things are looking interesting. For us, one of the big controversial discussions we're also having is around, and it's trivial, but it's controversial, it's around the name, MOMAN. We really need to start to think about what we stand for in the future.
Gotcha.
Right now we're the major oil marketers, but we're also talking about where the energy transition is going. We're talking about signing up to COP 27.
Right.
And so we kind of need to really make sure that as an organization we are moving, we're moving with the times.
Gotcha. Fantastic. Okay, any challenges over the past year? How have you handled them?
Yeah, so I mean, the interesting thing about our job is that whenever we have challenges, the country knows about it.
Right.
So we've had a few hiccups, but nothing insurmountable. And I think the challenges themselves have presented an opportunity for us to really engage with our stakeholders. So one that immediately comes to mind is the issue we had with contaminated fuel back in February, March.
Right.
The industry rallied, we got together with the regulators, we developed a set of technical and commercial SOPs, and we pushed that out. We had some supply considerations and issues, but again, NNPC, and I must commend the work they're doing through the auspices of PPMC, as well as the work of the regulator, Oga Farouk. There's a lot of work that's going on behind the scene, and I would hate to be in their position right now because it's a very globally difficult time, so they're managing to deal with that fairly well. So in terms of challenges, it's really the usual. But what we need to do is get to a place where we're a bit more proactive. And the way to get there is to start to fix some of the structural things. Infrastructure, subsidy removal, liberalization of the market, reduction or removal of any market dominance by any player.
Right.
So it's all of those things and making sure that duties are appropriately segregated. So those are the challenges we've had in the past. Implementation will be another challenge going forward, and we just need to make sure that as we move towards this deregulation, we're cognizant of where the common challenges are.
Well, you've preempted my next question. I think I've asked you this before.
Go on.
Fuel subsidies, you already mentioned it. I mean, projected to cost 6 trillion naira if we maintain them for throughout 2023. Do we yank them off one time, or do we, stagger it? What's the strategy there?
I mean, I think the first thing to say is that it's an incredible amount of money. Right? 6 trillion naira. Think about all the other things we could have done with that cash. But that said, MOMAN is a customer-facing organization, and therefore we are very attuned to the challenges that people are facing. The answer is both. The answer is, the truth of the matter is that the answer is that we can't yank it off at once.
Okay.
The impact, that cliff edge will just be too much for your average Nigerian family to sustain.
Right.
We're talking about over a decade of subsidy. So it's hard. And what we've always advocated, and we have said this many a times, is that a phased approach to this is the way to go.
Okay.
We've seen some organic movement, I'll call it that. We've seen some organic movement at the pump price, and we saw the impact that had on those queues that were starting to build up. If you kind of, if you give people some wiggle room and you make sure that each participant sees margin across the value chain, then you'll see better service. So I mean, I think that's it's one of the big focus areas for us, certainly.
Not sure if I should be asking you this because it's kind of upstream. We're generally talking about downstream. Any opinion on the refineries, whether they should be? I mean, I know there's some turnaround maintenance going on there. Whether they should be, I'm sorry, whether they should be sold off or kept.
Yeah. So I mean, I have the visibility I have into the refinery situation, particularly the Nigerian refineries, are probably the same as yours. My view and our association's view is that we should have sold those things many years ago. If you put that in the private sector's hands, they'll know what to do with it. Someone to get some money together. But where we are today is that we need refining from as many sources as possible. Yes, the Dangote refinery is coming up. It's coming up. MOMAN has engaged them, and we are starting to see what may feel like the structure post commissioning. But I think that those refineries should have been sold, and I think they should still be sold. But I hear positive things. I hear that they are working towards, and we'll hear some good news from
at
least the PH refinery in the short term.
We broke that news here.
No, that was you.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. You mentioned in your MOMAN strategy outlook for 2023, the name to try to incorporate renewables. Yeah. You already mentioned COP27 taking place Egypt next month. What do you make as a holistically Nigeria's energy transition pathway?
Okay, I mean, I think that actually what we're doing, at least the statements we're making publicly, I think we're good leaders for Africa. Yeah. What do I mean by that? I mean, at the last event, one of the discussion points was that African countries should not feel under pressure to also commit to a 2050
pressure from the West, right?
From the West, net zero position. The reality of the matter is that we have not really gone through mechanization in any sort of degree. If you look at all the statistics and all the charts, they show that when you look at what contributions to emissions countries or continents are making, Africa is a line in it. So I think it's important, given the amount of resources that we have, I think it's absolutely critical that we're allowed to not just to explore, but to exploit to the fullest capacity the natural resources we have. For us, peak oil is going to be slightly further out than anybody else. So I think 2060 is a realistic target, but we just need to make sure that as a country we're very clear on what the milestones are, so that 2050 doesn't come and we're still short. But I think the world is transitioning at a much faster rate than we think. And when this clean energy movement settles, we need to be prepared for it. But I think it's moving a lot faster than we think.
Got to be ready. Back to the downstream sector. Is the downstream sector, I guess, here in Nigeria, still a job creator? Still have the potential to create lots of jobs?
Oh, wow. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's not just a job creator. Clearly, it's also a source of investments as well. We've seen OVH, the OVH acquisition by NNPCL. So I think that whilst we don't have good data on what the downstream sector actually does, but if you look across the value chain, you recognize the significance that the subsector has in terms of the national economy and gross domestic productivity, because we work across the entire value chain. And in terms of productivity, most of my members run 24-hour operations. Wow. You can't run 24-hour shifts employing one person. So sometimes my members have double, triple roles for the same job because of the number of shifts that we're obligated to run. So I think the downstream sector will continue to be a positive contributor. It'll go through its challenges, but I think it's absolutely critical that for as long as it remains, as long as deregulation kicks in, such that investors can recoup, investors such as NNPCL Limited can recoup their investments in the industry, investors such as Ardova PLC can recoup their investments, then I think it's absolutely critical that the downstream continues to be seen as a great source of employment. What we need to do, however, is to make sure that it's not just employment for employment's sake, that we're actually building people's capacity and skills. Skills, so that the industry keeps moving in terms of its maturity. All
right, finally, I'm not going to bring you into elections. It's overall 2023, your outlook for the sector, I guess, oil and gas, it's a new year, new leadership. How do you feel about what's to come next year, just for your sector specifically?
So I'll not speak politically, but I'll speak as a strategist. The best thing that could happen from a strategic positioning point of view right now is that as we manage this transition, the incumbent administration...
That's not energy transition, you're talking about political transition.
That's right. It's absolutely critical that the current administration work with the incoming administration for the general good of Nigeria. So if we're going to have a phased deregulation in terms of pricing, then it's absolutely important that this current administration works lock in step and maybe takes a sacrifice. Because the new administration rightly will struggle to do anything that feels unpopular, as critical or as imperative as it might be for the country. It's politics. So it's absolutely critical that there is a dialogue or a handshake, a literal and metaphorical handshake between the two, such that one takes the hit and then the other can go.
It in, like a relay race.
Absolutely. So it's critical that it's the most important thing that I think both administrations can do for Nigeria.
Lots to look forward to. Congrats on your first year as the
Thank
chairman of
much.
MOMAN. Looking forward to another year. Mr. Olumide Adesina, CEO, Ardova PLC, chairman of the major oil marketers of Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Ruth. It's always a pleasure. All right.